Today we're breaking down Iron Lung. And when I say breaking down, trust me, I mean we're going to be plummeting into a literal ocean of human blood. Markiplier, I hope I said that right, but Mark takes a 60-minute horror game, and I heard it stressed a lot of you PC gamers out, but he turned it into this full-blown experience, and I think it did the game some justice. And when I say full-blown experience, I mean that claustrophobic dread. But usually when YouTubers make movies, we all get that little cringy feelings because it's going to be all nerdy or whatever the case may be. But this is anything but the source. I will say Mark really showed up here. He took the source material and he actually expanded on it, and he actually gave the game more lore and background. And I think that actually carries its weight going into this film. It honestly makes the game feel more like a prologue to the actual movie than it was actually supposed to be. Like, we're talking about massive practical effects. We're talking about existential nightmares, enough fake blood to set a literal Guinness Book of World Records. Like, now this film isn't perfect by any means, but it definitely has its pacing scars as well. But let's go ahead and get into why this is a massive step up in the game to film adaptation genre. One of the reasons that I felt that this really worked was because the concept of the game is pure horror. You're on a submarine with no windows. It's the submarine that's welded shut. And of course, you're in a river of blood or ocean of blood. But the film actually takes that quiet rapture concept where there's no stars and planets and everything's just gone and it vanished. And it actually gives it some weight. And I know you're wondering, how is there an ocean of blood when there's no planets, no stars, there's no nothing? There's just these Eden-like spaceships that are just rafts for whoever's remaining in humanity. I don't know. The film doesn't answer it and the game doesn't answer it, but it's out there. And speaking of the game, in the game, you're just a silent pilot. But in this film, Mark plays Simon, a man who is deeply remorseful and regretful for some explosion at a factory that happened long before the world and universe went dark, apparently. And the mission that he's going on isn't even about survival, in my opinion. I think it's a state mandated execution where it's disguised as this. But as the film goes on, you're watching a man reckon with his sins, all while trapped in this metal shoebox, trapped up under billions of pounds of dead souls. It's that blend right there of cosmic horror and it's that blend right there of cosmic horror and personal punishment that gives the film all of its weight. But before we talk about that X-ray twist that should literally change how you look at the game, if you love these deep dives where we separate cinematic gold from these cash grabs, hit that subscribe button. We're going to make sure that your watch list stays top tier. And if I didn't say it before, I'll say it now. Spoilers are coming ahead, so this is your spoiler warning. So here we go. We basically open with Simon being welded inside the SM-13. Definitely remember that number for later. In the game, it's mostly like intro text or whatever the case may be. But in this film, the movie gives us this visceral, industrial type nightmare. The world is dead. The consolidation of iron is really bad. So Simon's mission is to photograph anomalies on the moon. And I already know what you're going to say. I thought there weren't any planets or stars. I don't know. I can't explain it, but this is what happened. But the moon number is AT5. But the movie does the good job of establishing the stakes of what's going to happen in this film very, very quick. If the pressure doesn't crush you, then whatever's outside, the monsters or whatever the case may be, they're going to kill you. So as Simon navigates through this ocean of blood, the movie introduces probably its biggest deviation from the game, and that's those voices. In the game, it is total silence. I think you hear some clicking noises. I did watch a video on YouTube, but outside of that, the game is total silence. But here in the film, Simon picks up audio logs from the SM-8, and remember I told you this is the SM-13 that he's on. But he picks up audio logs from the SM-8 that suggests that somebody's been down there before. But that's not all. It also suggests that they started worshiping the blood and that they went crazy. And this is where it starts to get a little psychological, because this is where Simon starts to hear the speaker and the voice on the speakers, and the voice that he has, Ava. But you can clearly tell that it's not Ava because it's all distorted and it's cruel, and it's clearly not the same person, because when they was talking, you could clearly tell it's not the same person because when he was talking to Ava originally, it was clear, you could hear it coming through, but this version of Ava is definitely a different one. This one brings up his past, things about his mother, and that does confirm some new lore for the game and film that the blood is this kind of hive mind or has this sentient hive mind effect. And basically what I mean by that is it absorbs the memories of everybody that it kills or comes in contact with. But that basically leads us into the mid section of the movie. And this is a 2-hour film, and there's a lot, but not a lot going on, especially in the middle of it. So that's kind of why I'm flying along, because you're not missing a lot. But the midsection honestly kind of delivers the best lore for the film. And this is kind of where things start to pick up a little bit, just a little bit. But we find out that the camera that's on board is an X-ray imaging device. But in the game, it was just this crappy old camera from what I saw. But in the film, this revelation can kind of be devastating because it makes you think that those bodies and skeletons, I should say, that he's scanning on the floor may actually be alive. And the reason I say they may be alive because obviously, X-ray, see right through you. So that could actually be a person standing there just being seen through. And the whole radiation of it all, I thought this was ironic because every time Simon snaps a photo, which is what they want him to do, he is retroactively, I think I'm using that right, killing the people on the surface because he's shooting radiation up every time he takes a picture. So if you saw the film, he's the reason that everybody dies that's on the surface, because every time he takes a picture, he's shooting radiation up. But he wasn't doing it on purpose. It's not like he knew he was doing it. I don't even think they knew he was doing it, but he was doing it. But the last 15, 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so is where the film really picks up and a lot more happens. The film kind of drags along. Like it is, there are some pacing issues. I will say if this film was about an hour and a half, it would have been much better, because I think with the constrained timeline, you could have took out some of these dead gaps where there wasn't a lot going on. And I think the film would have felt a little bit more cohesive. Not that it wasn't a cohesive story, because it was just too long. But I say all that to say that the ending, the final 15, 20 minutes is all about this nightmare of blood and noise. We see him getting thrown around a little bit. The blood drips on him. He starts to mutate a little bit. I thought that was kind of weird. And he hears voices kind of after that, and it's talking to him. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot going on. But in the game, the way it ends, the blood gets in and the ship implodes. But the movie expands this significantly. So Simon eventually realizes that his handlers on the surface don't mean him any well. They're not going to set him free. That was never their intention to begin with. And he also doesn't want to give in to whatever this Leviathan-looking creature is that's down here underwater. So he basically just says, fuck them both. He's not going to let the people on the surface try to weaponize this godly light that they're fascinated about, whatever this light is. This creature doesn't want anybody to know about this light. Nobody needs to know about it. You're the last one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in a moment of just final defiance against everybody, the hive mind monster thing, the people on the surface, he takes out the ship's black box, wraps it in a life vest, and sends it to the shore in blood. Not that anybody could really get to it there, which I think is the point, obviously. But as the sub starts to fill up with more blood, and like I told you earlier, it's already starting to mutate him. You can see it on his arms, and it dripped on his face or whatnot, and it starts turning him into something. But he basically chooses to die. The monster eventually opens up and bites the sub. You kind of see that, and it implodes, it killing Simon, the ship, and the monster itself as well. We go to black after that, so there's nothing left. And then we see the thing floating on the surface, but it's nihilistic, it's very wet, and it's kind of haunting. But I did a little research for you guys, and I saw where Mark and David's the guy that created the game, and he also consulted on this movie as well. They left a little gem in there for you. They went ahead and confirmed that fan theory about the camera, the chromatic camera. So it is an X-ray camera. And I think there were some coordinates that Simon set in there. They were X864Y258, I believe. And I think those were a one-on-one match from the film to the game. And I think that's where the game's ancient ruins were, if I remember correctly. Tell me in the comments if I'm right about that, but I'm pretty sure that's where the game's ancient ruins were. But I thought this film was a pretty good watch. Not great, but I thought it was pretty good, especially for what it was. It's an indie film, self-funded by a YouTube creator. And I know that probably would turn a lot of people off. And thank God this guy has a large fan base that's going to go support him. So it'll probably do well. But even if he didn't, I did, but even if he didn't, the movie actually wasn't bad. It was just a little too long, but I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. I really think it was good, and I understand what he was trying to do and where it was coming from. Coming from the video game genre, especially in this scenario where he can basically create his own narrative because the game is silent, there's not a lot of narrative to it. It was cool that he expanded on an original source material and expanded on the lore of that source material. I thought that was really cool. But like I said, it dragged out a lot, especially in that second act. 2 hours was just a little bit too long for this movie. I think if you shave off 30 minutes, this movie is a lot better because 2 hours is just a lot of time to spend inside of a metal shoebox with not a lot going on. But I enjoyed the movie. And I think it's a solid win for horror fans and indie fans and YouTube creators. But I think Iron Lung proved that it deserved to be on the big screen. Mark did a good job. This wasn't just some YouTube movie that you could have just streamed on your computer. I thought it was done really well. Like he literally made a legitimate horror staple. He didn't bullshit with any of the details and stuff like that. So that was good. But with all that being said, don't forget to like and subscribe. And let me know what indie you think deserves big screen treatment next. And with all that being said, thank you all for coming. I appreciate you all. Thank you. And I will see you next time. Bye.